Welcome to Deal Nation. We're joined today by Felipe Bossans from 8020 REI. Felipe, how you doing?
Great to see you, man. Great to be here. Love it.
Great to see you too. I've actually behind this Deal Nation background. I've actually got a messy bed back there. You've got a real swimming pool and a nice sunny day, so I'm a little bit jealous.
It's all right. It's in the high 80s, so it's not that cool.
Okay, so you're gonna be sweating this one out a little bit. Well, I promise I
Yeah,
won't
a
I won't
little
ask
bit.
any questions that make you sweat. We'll keep it casual.
It's all right, man. We'll do it.
So I definitely want to really get into the data side of things. I mean, you and Jesus, your partner at 8020 REI, are really important voices in the real estate investment industry, and have really, I think, advanced the usage of data and the quality of data for the industry as a whole. So I'm really looking forward to getting your insights there. But I do want to get a little bit more information about your background. We chatted a little bit pre-show, but let everybody know who's listening how you got involved in REI and then what the leap was to 8020.
Oh, absolutely, man. I mean, going back, Jesus and I go way back to. We're both originally from South America, from Chile, and known each other since I don't know 1999. Started in real estate back in 2017. And he has a background in engineering. I have a background in sales. So we are in a very competitive market, South Florida. So we went against really big, sophisticated players. So we had to figure out a way of how do we um, get in front of sellers before these big players. So back when nobody else was doing it, and nobody was talking about texting, for example, as a service, or list stacking, things of that nature. We started doing those things early on, and we started noticing that we were getting in front of properties with very little, sometimes no competition, and we're like, oh shit! I mean, this is like the golden key to our real estate empire. But turned out that to scale a real estate business, it takes more than that. And fast forward, hired a business coach who I believe in, what was it, end of 2018, told us, you know what, you guys are good operators, but I've never seen anybody process the data and doing the marketing the way that you guys are doing it. So you should actually do a business out of it. I work with, I don't know, hundreds of investors, and you should really seriously do this. And fast forward 5 years later, here we are.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, I started with launch control in 2019, so right after the launch. And one of the first couple people that the founder told me to talk to was you guys, because you were
Oh yeah.
just you were a trusted voice, and data was so important to what we were doing as a very young SMS engagement platform. And so, of my sort of pillars of industry knowledge, people that I needed to tap into right away. You guys were on that very early short list because, yeah, you've been doing things in a smart, creative way since the beginning, which is great. I do want
Yeah,
to go back a
and
little bit. Where in Chile are you both? Where are you both from?
we're from Santiago, which is like the main city, big city. And I mean, not so much, not too many fun things to do. That's why transitioning, moving to Miami wasn't that hard of a choice.
Yeah.
So we
No, I
like it
do. I
here
do know
better.
that part of Chile. I stayed in Valparaiso for a few months, like a
That's
few
where I went
years
to
back.
college.
So,
That's where I went to
oh, nice.
college.
It's a great
Yeah.
spot. But
So
Miami, South Beach, that's not so bad either.
yeah, yeah, that's for sure. And I mean, one thing I mean, again, from knowing you and Aaron since 2019, actually way back 2018, I believe, when we were part of other masterminds. One thing that really always caught our attention with Jesus was like, there's very little people that have that level of sophistication and that vision as you guys did with launch and everything, and what you were able to build as a platform. So it's props to you guys. You've done amazing.
Oh no, we appreciate that, and it it all comes from, I think, a common place of, especially at that time, where there's a transition where everybody started reading Rich Dad Poor Dad and going, wait, there's an entire market here. And it was kind of hidden, and then people that had some vision really kind of stepped up and figured out ways to identify exactly who was in that distressed property market, and then how to communicate with them, how to engage with them. And that was something that was really untapped. And now seems a bit more obvious with all of the different marketing channels that people are using, and the more sophisticated systems and CRMs and things that have been put into place. But in those days, there was a little bit more of a open field, and really figuring out how to capitalize on things. So it's been an interesting ride to see how things have developed.
Oh yeah, yeah. Lots of things are. It's an ever changing industry to say the least.
Yeah. So what were some of the things that, I mean, you guys were coming in, moving not just to a new town, moving to a new country. Like how did you first get tipped off to this potential market as something that you guys could use as a to build business out of?
I mean, for us was a natural transition. I mean, again, just typical stuff. Read Rich Dad Poor Dad. Then went to a local meetup and learn about this thing called wholesaling, where where it became very popular. But at the same time, we noticed that there was a we're fanatical about the 80/20 principle. How do we can achieve more with less? Like how do we figure out a way, no so much of hacking, but about how are we more efficient and effective on doing things. And then we started using it for ourselves in our real estate operation. That took us to, I think 2019 was the first year where we got over 100 deals closed in a very competitive
Wow.
market. Then through the same connections that you, Aaron, and the industry, people started asking, hey, is this something that can I use it in my market? And one thing led to another, and then we went through several iterations, including the done for you model, where we were even do texting for our clients. And finally, I would say end of 2021, we decided to just focus on our gold medal talent, which is providing the absolute best data that will help you close more deals from texting, calling, and direct mail without spending more.
Yeah, I remember you guys done for you service quite well. You did a great job. I know it was a ton of work, and I understand why you wanted to put the focus on the gold medal side of the business. But pat on the back, you guys did a really great and detailed job at that. For people, because we have a lot of listeners that are just now getting involved in real estate investment, and they might not know the origin of 80/20, what that name signifies in just the industry in general. So you want to give just like a quick little background on how you guys chose that name?
So yeah, so the 80/20 rule, or also known as the Pareto principle, comes from I don't want to butcher it, but it's from the 1700s. I believe it was a gentleman named Wilfredo Pareto that would, when he planted, I think it was pea pods, and figured out that there was always, like 20% of the pods were giving 80% of the yield. And then he started looking at everything in life, like how the wealth is concentrated, how like the typically in a company, in a business, there's always going to be a 20% top producers, and an 80% that do that. And for us, it was just in that, because that's what we live by. Everything that we do in business and life is like, okay, how do we do more with less? How do we innovate about and living the 80/20 principles. So therefore the name. And we're very creative, created a couple sister companies, and guess what, their name 80/20, whatever that line of business is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So let's get into the data side of things a bit. So when you guys look at data, so if we think of it just in terms of a big market, you're in the South Florida market. A lot of people
Correct.
that come into the industry new will say, well, I'm going to text South Florida. I can drive, I can be anywhere within an hour. I'll look at any property. I'm just going to text, call, send direct mail to South Florida. Right. And you guys have always taken more of a granular approach to it. So you can kind of walk the audience through a little bit when you guys see a region, what are you really seeing within that data?
I mean, in every and this is again going back to the 80/20 principle. In every single market, there's always going to be a 20% of properties that are likely to be sold at a discount. So what it makes sense, it's to target those properties first and be very intentional about how you're going to do it, because there's always more iterations inside of it. So within that 20% of properties that you're going to target, there's always going to be, think about it in terms of a pyramid. At the top of the pyramid, you're going to have properties that they have the most data points that apply to them, or think in terms of the most distress or stacking points. And then you're going to have the properties that make more sense for you as an investor to buy. So where that intersect, it's always tends to be the 1 to 4%. So it's the 80/20 within the 80/20 of your market. Those are properties that you want to be texting very often, you want to be calling, you want to be mailing, you want to be door knocking. So going back to your question, if somebody's starting in a market, you have two options. You can one, spray and pray and just blanket the market, which of course is not cost effective at all. Unless you have very deep pockets, it's going to be a very expensive strategy. Or you can go an inch wide, a mile deep, and get some very quick wins that are going to build cash flow, so you can start going deeper into the list as you go. So that's pretty much our strategy, how we started, and how we recommend any investor, whether you're starting in the business, or just you're established investor as well. There's always you have to start somewhere.
Yeah, for sure. And it's something we always try to preach at Launch Control is, like you said, like 20% of those properties are going to have a likelihood to sell off market, right? They
Yeah.
meet certain distress factors. And but I think more than 20% of those identified properties are likely to sell. So
Yeah.
the question is, it becomes, it's not a question, it becomes a puzzle to be solved. Right. So how do you solve that puzzle? How do you break through with the homeowner? And it is almost never spray and pray, right? It's almost never the volume of your touch points, but rather the quality of your touch points that make a difference, or
Yeah.
your ability to listen and adapt to the seller needs that make a difference. So within that 20%, when you talk about distress factors, can you give a few examples for people that are just really getting involved in the industry of what distress factors you guys look for and why?
I would say the 4Ds play an important role: debt, death, divorce, and downsizing. There's a guy that was saying that there's a fifth one, which is drunk and drugs too, because that's like typically they that's an indicator that they're falling into distress. There's I would say that there's only one magic list, that it's readily accessible to anybody starting. It's the pre-foreclosure list, okay, or NOD, depending on whatever the regulation is in that state. Uh, the challenge with it is that it's not scalable. There's always a finite amount of those that you can target. So I would say the top list that we see where the best performing results are, well, pre-foreclosure, anything tax delinquency or tax deeds, city liens and violations, and probates or states. That's definitely where I would start if I would have to go back
Yeah.
and do it all over again.
So this is something I've always been genuinely curious about, and I think you guys will probably have the best lens on this. The pre-foreclosure lists, a lot there's the temptation of those is that there's a ticking clock, right? They've got 90 days, 60 days, something, where they need to make a firm decision on what they're going to do with that property. But because those lists are readily available, the level of competition tends to be quite high in terms of investors, right? Everybody's going after those lists, and so breaking through is there. There can be a real an art and science to breaking through to the homeowners because of the ready availability of those lists. So, are there any like pre foreclosure leading indicators that you guys look for that might give people early access to those lists, the ability to jump in before they
I
actually
I,
hit
I
pre
I
foreclosure?
love Yeah, I love your train of thought, because there's one of the things that our data scientists have been working for years is one of the updates that definitely it's gonna give a pretty good indicator that this property might be into foreclosure, which is the we call it the propensity to fall in propensity of default, which is, there's always some other data points that can be a very good indicator of somebody getting into foreclosure. For example, late payments on cars, credit cards, 60-day notices, things like that. That utility bills shut off. So that it's when you put all of those together, it gives you a pretty good idea of what's about to happen. So we believe it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when that they will fall off. And you can, with that, you can sort of break through the noise and not and not have to deal with that much competition.
Yeah, I remember, like I told you pre-show, I've lived outside of the United States for a long time. I'm the digital nomad life.
Love it.
And
I love it.
I remember when I was prepping to leave, I was perfectly stable. I made good money, but I was looking for ways to reduce costs as much as possible. And so I asked myself, like, what are the things that cost me the most? And the thing I ended up doing was getting rid of my car. Right? Like I didn't absolutely need it to get to work. And so I got rid of it and I saved myself a bunch of money every month with gas and insurance and car payment. So I looked for the biggest chunk of money that I could remove, or the biggest financial burden I could remove. So when you talk about these leading indicators of things that might not seem home related, right? Like people that are defaulting on their credit cards, or they've got late payments, or they've got some other level of financial stress that isn't necessarily related to the house, they might be looking for that big chunk that they can solve, right? Like what's the biggest financial burden that I can remove? And if the home is something that they can remove that stress, and you're able to get in early, then that gives you a huge advantage as an investor by just problem solving way ahead of time.
Yeah, yeah, and also it's a sales conversation also that you want to have. You definitely like if you think about it in terms of like Ricky Bobby, if you ain't first, you're last with this type of leads. So
Yeah.
you want to get there first, and you want to be better prepared. You want to be able to solve that problem in a way where the perception of your value is higher than your competitor, because anybody and their mother can door knock, text, or call somebody in distress. And like it, a lot of times I would say investors confuse a problem or a distress with motivation. So they're not the same. You may be super distressed, but you might have all the motivation to stay in the house. And as investors, if we're mindful of that and we understand that especially, let's say, wholesaling, we're never plan A, we're not even plan B or C. But if we are
Right.
very upfront about it, it's like, hey, Mr. Seller, I know that this is not your plan A, not even B or C. Here are the options that we can line up for you. Plans A, B, C, and D. And if selling the property, it's like the last resort, we're here to help. And that's how you're able to close more, as opposed to other investors that more self-serving.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you said that, and it's honestly it's become a bit of a repeating theme here on Deal Nation, and it's everybody that's kind of at the top of the game will tell you the exact same thing. They will tell you that if you need to give the homeowner all of their options and allow them to self-eliminate, right? Allow them to come to the realization that A, realistically off the table for them. B, realistically off the table for them. C, maybe if they had 10 grand in the bank, but they don't, off the table. Now they're ready to work with you. And a lot of times, early stage investors are afraid or nervous to offer up A, B, and C because what if the person takes that route? What if they lose a deal? But people that are making millions of this will all tell you the same thing. Lay out the options, let them self-eliminate what isn't going to work, then provide the solution that you want to provide.
That's exactly how it works, man. That's exactly how it works. And it works the same way when you're going to be doing your marketing. You have options A, B, C, and D. Like you said, like, let's use the example of South Florida, or a big market like, LA. you know okay, option A, I can just blanket the market and I'll just hope for the best, put my head in the sand, and just I'll close deals. I'll spend a ton of money, but am I being efficient? Am I being effective? Probably not.
Yeah, I love that you said that. For anybody that's just listening on a streaming service and not watching this on YouTube, I was literally clapping, right? Because it that importance of starting that recognition of distress does not equal motivation. I love that. Like that recognition at the beginning stages when you're just starting your marketing, when you're sending the first text message through launch control, when you're sending out your first mailer, when you've got someone placing a call to that homeowner and they've got 40 seconds at most to state their case and get the homeowner interested. All of those early touch points require the same level of finesse that would be required when the call gets handed off to Felipe and he takes it to close out the deal. Right? That understanding of where the homeowner is and how to help them recognize that the solutions that you provide are valid and possibly the best choice under distressed circumstances for them. Like that starts very early, and I think that's an a miss at times.
100%. 100%. That's I mean, it sometimes is more an art than a science. And I mean, what you asked me about the 80/20 approach and why is that important. I believe that what's happening in the marketplace, of course, what got us here won't get us there. And like the example that we use, somebody that is just shotgun and blanketing the market, that might have worked back up until, like, I don't know, 2017, 18, when we were first starting. And think about it as real estate investing 1.0. you know Most investors today are in what we call real estate investing 2.0, which is they are experiencing success. For example, they might even be launch users, or they're using a done for you direct mail service like the one that we offer at DM Force. But the the majority of investors that are experiencing success are of the approach of, you know what, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Just keep using it until there's a need for fine tuning, or what we call today real estate investing 3.0, which is like a third iteration of how things are working. Like for example, the uh, in the example of texting, you know, how important are the word patterns that you use to ensure that your deliverability is on point. You know, like just because you've had great results with certain templates, it doesn't mean that that's going to keep on working. You know, you got to understand that that there's always the investor, the seller, and there's also the carriers and the regulations there.
Yeah.
So you got to be very on point when it comes to technology and the trends. And that's why it, again, real estate investing 3.0, it's what we believe it's the best trend when it comes to doing your marketing. So I'm going to use the example of one of our clients. He's already a very successful real estate investor in the Midwest. Perhaps, if not the biggest, the top three turnkey providers in the Midwest. And when they came on board, they were already successful. They were already successful. They were already closing hundreds of transactions, and they had, you know, a huge budget for texting, for direct mail, especially for direct mail, which was about 80% of their budget. And we took them through the process of, you know, fine tuning their buy box to see where they they should be deploying more marketing dollars based on their previous performance and what their competition was doing to see where the opportunity was. Also, you know, like the especially with direct mail, the piece that is sent, it's super important, especially the offer, now that offer letters are super popular. And you know, like in 60 days, through fine tuning their buy box and their valuation model for the offer letter, they were able to double their lead flow.
Wow.
And those are the type of decisions that, you know, when you're in this third iteration, you're making data driven decisions. You're no longer shooting from the hip. You're no longer basing your marketing decisions on emotion, which is what a lot of us do in the beginning.
No, absolutely. It's one of the things that I've always really admired about you guys is that you're not just providers, you're practitioners. And so you're testing the data, you're running different scenarios, you're hypothesizing what might work and trying it out. Like you guys are always in a data lab and you're always working through different results to see what's going to hit and what's not. So it's, you know, when in the beginning, and this has been consistent, anytime we've said, well, where's the industry headed? Where's it trending? What's coming up next? You guys are at the top of the call sheet, right? Because you are actually out there in the lab testing things out. I don't think all data providers can say that, right? Like some are aggregating. You guys are you know aggregating and running tests and figuring out, you know, very efficient but comprehensive data ranking processes. So the fact that you're always in the lab, I think, is really a testament to the strength of the company.
Yeah, I mean, you have to start somewhere.
So for you guys, you know, you're you're one of the leading data providers, if not the leading data provider in the REI space, and you know, a lot of people working with like the top groups, like the Collective Genius, really lean heavily on you guys. But what's your avatar? Because you know, there's probably 30,000 plus investors nationwide. When should people come to you? What's a good fit for 80/20?
So that's a great question. The ideal avatar, it's already for us, for our data, to really leverage our data. It's it's the professional investor. It's somebody who's doing on average, I would say on the low end, 20 to 40 deals a year, who are already running a sales and marketing business, and real estate becomes pretty much the widget, what they're trading. Okay. And why is that? Because the way that it works with us, uh, you would really see the benefit of closing more deals from direct mail, calling, and texting without spending more. Once you surpass a certain marketing budget, like I would say on the low end, 15 to 20,000. On the average of our clients, I would say it's probably like the upper echelon of collective genius. Like 150 plus deals a year. Those are the clients that we see more success because they're consistently marketing and they're consistently fine tuning their buy box, and they're consistently, uh, like they never stop. Even though if there's because you always have what it's called the news and the noise. The small player hears the noise and stop doing marketing. They are like, oh, texting is gonna get shut off. Now I'm gonna shut it off. And I'm like, dude, no, that's
Yeah.
noise. News. It's what you see on. It's what it's really happening. So
Yeah, and the
that's
funny thing about the noise side of it is because that is a pretty big group within real estate investment. And we talked briefly about competition before, right? But the industry is for as much as it's grown, is still quite small. So
oh
when
yeah.
when when somebody goes, oh, texting's dead, which it's obviously not, and then a bunch of people run to PPC, all the competition is now on PPC, and then a few of the big coaches say, oh, we're getting great leads from Facebook, and then whoa, everybody runs to that, and you have
Want to
this
keep
like
up want to
competition.
keep up with the Joneses. And then I can tell you from experience, I have one of my clients in it's actually a shared client of both of us, that they're one of the top players in New England, never stopped texting in 5-6 years. You don't see them posting stuff on social media because they'd rather be doing deals and doing the work, getting results. uh, but they're operating at a 60% profit, and
Nice.
80% of their deals come from like launch and our data.
Yeah,
Tell them
and
tell
that
them texting is dead. I mean, good luck telling them that.
no, for sure. And there are just like within real estate investment, like there are certain marketing channels that, as long as you're bringing in enough deals to afford it, should be foundational to your business. Should be there every month, and there may be some ups and downs, but over the course of 12, 18 months, you'll see the patterns of consistency, and you'll see the returns coming in. And it's that sticking with it, that it comes, if you're doing texting every month, and you do a direct mail campaign once a quarter, and you do, like, if you stick with those foundational tenets of marketing, they're going to return results in month over month, year over year. And it's the when you jump and let a pipeline empty out, let a pipeline empty out, that's when it gets to be a bit of a struggle.
Yeah, it's called a roller coaster, the feast and
Yeah.
famine roller coaster. And that's why for us, when you're going back to your question, what's our ideal avatar of client? It's somebody that is consistent and they have a bias for action. So they're willing to, do the work, and they're always striving to do better. Like, let's say, instead of like you said, like instead of having a limited mindset of, oh, texting is dead, they're asking better questions. Like, how do we do more with less from texting, knowing that there's regulations, that the landscape is changing, which is okay, and just, how do we perform better? Those are the clients that are consistently outperforming the average nationwide, the ones that are consistently closing. They're closing more deals with less leads, that they have less churn, that their cost per acquisition goes down. So again, there's still you can still experience success as long as you do the work and you do the right work.
Yeah, one of a question that I really don't like when it comes to texting is when somebody goes, well, how many texts is it going to take to get a deal? Well, that there's so many variables to that. It's not a direct math equation, right? If you can be on a core package with launch, and if you're really segmenting the 80/20 data, maybe starting
Mm-hmm.
with some of those that leading indicator data, that
Mm-hmm.
like pre foreclosure data, and you're starting there, and you're providing solutions in your discovery calls, and you have the right engagement processes in place. Your text to deal number is going to be exponentially lower than somebody that is text blasting South Florida, right? Like like you said, like that gets very costly. If you have deep pockets and you can just burn money on data, then will you get deals? Sure, but if you really want to maximize that data and be able to close as many distressed properties as you can, you want to have a very purposeful, practical approach to it, and your number of text required to get a deal will drop again exponentially.
100%, 100%. And it goes back to what, what we were talking about. Like, there's in our industry, in our industry, uh, and we both happen to work on the outbound side of things. We're not PPC providers or PPL or things of that nature. So we're very familiar with what it takes to, from creating deals from outreach. So the three main levers that you always have to be looking into pulling are: one, how do I generate more and more consistent leads? How do I get more and better leads? Two, how do I convert more of those leads into appointments that turn into contract? Because that's when I start seeing my conversion rates, my cost per contract, so called. And the third lever is, how do I lower my cost per acquisition? So yes, like you said, I can hear the noise and put all my marketing spend, the $10,000 that I was using to do targeted texting with good data, with a good platform, into doing PPL, and all of a sudden my return on investment goes from maybe 6x to 2x. So as opposed to, hey, just keep doing the work, and get better at it.
Yeah, and I think also like it comes down to the efficiency side of things, right? Like it's easy to get caught up in number of deals, but it's how much cash is being produced from those deals, right? Are you
Amen, brother. Amen.
like 6x versus 2x, right? Like I'd rather close 3 super high quality deals that I made a bunch of money off of than put in the time equity necessary to close 7 that close at a much lower margin. It's what did I actually earn out of it, you know?
Yeah. And at the end of the day, you have to, I always tell my clients whenever we have engagement calls, is you have to remove the emotion out of the equation. You have to start making more data driven decisions. Like, you want to move the three main levers, which is get more leads, convert more of those into contracts, and lower your cost per acquisition. You have to make data driven decisions.
Yeah.
You have to look back at the last 2 years and say, hey, this should be my buy box. And then on the other hand, I was like, okay, what's the 20% of properties that are more likely to be sold at a discount in my market? And that's where I would start. And I mean, if I will have only $20,000 right now to get started in the business, I will probably do a blended of direct mail and and texting and calling. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great starter pack. I mean, if you start with text, which is going to have the lowest price point, um, of the three, really, unless you're doing all of the calling yourself. You can start to get the pipeline filled up, and then yeah, use direct mail to get some of those hand raised motivated leads coming in. But you want to that my a small argument for starting with calling and text before you get to a direct mail um, program would be, you need your at bats, right? You need to be able to practice talking to homeowners,
That's right.
and you're gonna stumble, right, if you're in the beginning. So give yourself the at bats. The cold calling and text is going to tee up those at bats much faster. And then when you get a hand raised motivated lead coming in from a direct mail piece, you've got your practice in, right? And you're ready
Yeah, you're
to
warmed
to
up. you're
you're
warmed
warmed
up.
up and you're warmed up and you're ready. So
That's
I
it.
mean, you've given
Love it.
some incredible practical advice for people, especially those that are, you know, in that beginning to middle stage. I do have one more question for people that are in that group, though. You know, we get with this question happens a lot with real estate gurus and the ones that are quote unquote gurus, right? Is like, what do you look out for to let you know that maybe that guru is taking you down the wrong path? I want to ask the same question in relation to data because there are a lot of data providers out there, and obviously not naming any names here. But if people are not ready for 80/20 yet, but they're going to need to get their data from somewhere. What are some tripping points that they should look for that is kind of to let them know that, you know, maybe this isn't the best data source, or maybe it's a one you should ask a few more questions about?
So that is a great question. So the where I would start, if you're not at a volume yet where you're consistently marketing, I don't know, 15, 20K or more a month, I would look right in my backyard. Go an inch wide and a mile deep, because there's a 99% chance, unless you're in East Bumble, Mississippi, or Louisiana. Like, there's a couple counties, yeah, that you have to actually go to the county, but most counties are rare. They have readily available resources where you can pull that data directly from them, and that's gonna, you can just pull that data as fresh as it gets, skip trace it, call it, text it, get those bats in the beginning, build a pipeline, get some deals, build some cash flow, and then do a blended average of, calling, texting, and mailing, and that's how you build a business. And to get to the and we've seen a lot of times, and that's actually one of the things that we've been very, very fortunate, from the time that we've been in this industry, and the collaborations, the cool people we've met across the years, is that we've invested in bolt-on sister companies that, that they plug into this, because just because you're, let's say you're not at a level of sophistication, or doing the volume that will make justify investing in our data, that doesn't mean that you might not be one or two hires away from really taking this off. So we invested in we're both from Latin America. We invested in a talent acquisition agency. It's called 80/20 Recruit, where, like, for investors all sizes, like somebody that might need a full-time texter to log into launch, so they can just focus on talking to sellers that are pre-qualified, instead of, now all of a sudden, instead of buying PPC leads or PPL leads, they're talking to pre-qualified sellers because they already have somebody on payroll for way less than they would have gotten, their hourly rate, and they're doing it. So right now, the main three positions that we are sourcing there are outreach specialists, calling and texting. Some of them have even been pre-certified to use launch. We don't even, promote them if they don't know how to use it at the very minimum.
Oh, that's great.
And then cold callers, lead managers, and even executive assistants. Because like, if you're a solopreneur, your first hire should be an executive assistant right away.
Yeah, so I just want to, you've dropped in some gold here, so I want to highlight a couple things that you just said. In terms of actually sourcing data locally, and you use the expression "go an inch wide and a mile deep." I love that. I wrote it down. And I think that's very, very, very good advice, and a good reminder that, you know, there's always questions about, you know, data usage and compliance related questions, but it's important to remember that all of this data is publicly available, and if you go digging,
Yeah,
you'll find it. You know,
yeah,
and then yeah, the is speaking of repeated themes here on Dale Nation, outsource early is another one that happens because, you know, when you're building a real estate investment business, like, you can't be expected to be a subject matter expert in marketing, sales funnel, uh, seller conversations, and conversion of those calls, the dispo side of things, to be a tax account attorney, to be a, and the list goes on and on and on, right? Like, you need
that's
time
right.
to focus on what you're really great at. So recognize what you're great at, and you know, economically outsource what you can. So a great example of an executive assistant, get that admin stuff off of your plate so that you
ASAP.
can just, yeah, exactly. So you can take a deep breath and go into those seller conversations with a clear head and not distracted. Like, it's super important.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's a very good resource from it's a book from Dan Martell, the founder of SaaS Academy,
Hmm.
and it's called Buy Back Your Time, and it has the 4x rule. If somebody can do this, can do an activity for 1/4 of what your hourly rate should be, that position should be delegated. And
Yeah.
we are in an industry that where, again, there's, I'm just going to use your example. You can have a lifestyle business and make it very profitable as well. Like, for example, you can live offshore and have the right systems, the right data in place, the right people in place, where all you need to focus on all day long is to do what you do best. Let's say seller conversations, appointments over the phone, or whether, like the ones that are local, do it in person. So there's a ton of resources.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, okay, so one last question, wrap things up. You talked briefly about real estate 3.0, right? Or investing 3.0. So where do you see the industry headed in the next couple of years? I know it's, there's always questions coming from the investment community about, what's next and the health and safety of the industry. So give us some closing thoughts on that.
So okay, so that's I'm gonna try to keep it short and not bore the audience with some predictions like they. But I mean, at my partner comes from the poker industry, and he saw the evolution of being a mom and pop type of card game among all guys to become a super data driven industry, and where these young kids, 21 years old, they were playing 2,400 tables at a time. That's sophisticated.
Yeah.
We don't have the luxury of 20 years of an evolution. It's already happening with AI. It's just we have to embrace a new reality. We have to embrace that right now what got us here, let's say, list stacking, basic, best practices for calling, texting, and mailing, they are no longer going to work. That's going to become obsolete. We're getting into a highly regulated industry where wholesaling it's getting outlawed in some states. Some other states you have to disclose a lot more. So making sure that you have a super dialed in buy box, meaning what's that 20% of properties that are likely to give you 80% of the results. It's extremely important. Also, having access to the best possible data that you can just take and give to a vendor for texting, for calling, for mailing, that becomes critical, because we're seeing cost per acquisition nationwide that's starting to creep up, and that's because it's becoming more and more saturated.
Yeah, but I think that the something that I'd like to see as part of the maturation process of the industry is, let's just embrace the transparency, right? Like, let's
Yes,
because I think that,
that's right.
a lot of like this idea of like backroom deals happening, right? Like, let's just get past that and build trust with the homeowners, because the distressed property market is not going anywhere. People are not going to stop having liens. People are not going to stop having the four
Exactly.
Ds that you mentioned. Those things are going to remain consistent. So let's just embrace the transparency and increase legitimacy, or perceived legitimacy, and just all continue to make a whole bunch of money.
Exactly, and be a resource, like you said, like the what you see as a trend on the most successful investors that come to the show, the ones that are already like past the like they're already making an impact in their community or there's this space. It's you're no longer self-serving. You're just okay. I may be the solution for your problem, but if I'm not, I'm definitely going to point you in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, Felipe, thank you so much. That was really insightful. I think that people are going to get a ton of great information and advice from this. So, really appreciate you coming on. Let's do it again soon. This is all advice that I'm sure the listeners are going to greatly appreciate.
100%, brother. Would love to be here again.
All right. Thank you, sir. Enjoy your afternoon. Enjoy
Take
that
care.
sunshine.
Have a
Okay.
good one.